Thanks so much for being with us. Commissioners, are there any questions regarding our 5 p.m. agenda? All right. If we finish this meeting in time, we will call for a closed session between the briefing and the 5 p.m. meeting. All right, with that said, we'll move into our first staff update, and Rob Hartman is joining us with an update from the Internal Audit Office. Good afternoon, Rob.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I hope you're doing well. I have some, perfect. They're way ahead of me. I hope you all are doing well this afternoon. I wanted to give an update on what work internal audit has been up to since the last time I presented to you all back in January or so. So I have 2 audits to present to you today. One is a special project that internal audit completed, and the other is an audit of procurement cards. So the first one is the special project that we completed. There are 4 recommendations on this one. So this slide has the first 2, and then the next slide has the next 2. The first thing that we ran across is that there are sometimes individuals with procurement cards where they might have only one person in the review chain. So as an example, you'll have an employee, like an admin assistant or something to that effect, and the only person who's reviewing that transaction is the department director. So what we're asking is finance to go in, identify those, and add an extra layer of review to really make sure that we have a good separation of duties, to make sure that we don't have directors asking their admins to buy things for them and then being the only one to approve those. Finance is currently working on identifying all of those chains and figuring out who should be the extra layer of review. That should be completed by the end of this calendar year. Next up, when we noticed during this project that there were a lot of times where we were putting food purchases, like meals and that sort of thing that were for meetings, we were coding them to office supplies, which I think was just kind of a sort of an error in the way that we were doing things. So we got with budget, we had budget add in some new codes. That way people could specifically code for food that was being used for meetings. And then finance sent out a note to everyone in the county saying, hey, this is how we're going to do this going forward. So this was completed as part of this budget cycle, which means that going forward, this shouldn't be an issue where we have people putting food into office supplies starting on July 1 of this year. So that one's been completed. Next up is the way that we do things right now. Finance doesn't have the overhead to review every single P-card transaction. This is something that's somewhat of a common practice or maybe even a best practice depending on the organization, but finance just does not have the staff to complete that. And so what they do instead is currently a random sample of 50 procurement card transactions each month. So what we asked is that if you don't have the ability to review every single transaction, you at least do a risk-based sample rather than a random sample. This was estimated to be completed at the end of the fiscal year, but there was some turnover in the procurement office that led this to being pushed out to the end of this month. That position that turned over is being filled, and this last I checked, this is still should be completed by the end of September, with the review for October being risk-based rather than random. And then lastly was to update and clarify the conflict of interest policy. There were some gaps in there about what would and would not require conflict of interest disclosure. So we asked HR to look at that policy, figure out what those clarifications should be, and then draft a new policy that right now we have on there September 30th, but that should be coming to the commissioners sometime in October or November, that updated policy. Don't know exactly when, but when it does, those clarifications will be in there, and then our conflict of interest policy should be much more robust to make sense for people. That wraps up all the things that we found during the special project, which wasn't specifically about P-cards, but there were obviously some P-card issues in there. And that brings us into the actual dedicated procurement card audit that we completed in internal audit. So the first one had to do with training, this recommendation. As of right now, you have to complete P-card training before you receive a P-card, as well as when your card expires, which right now is every 5 years. So that's a very infrequent training schedule. Best practices in the industry is typically 1 to 2 years. So we asked that finance review that and see what made the most sense for this organization, balancing people's time with the want to make sure that people are able to understand the rules. Finance is working on that, and they estimate they'll complete that by the end of this calendar year. Next up is update the procurement policy regarding personal purchases. In our procedure documentation, which is still required to follow, we do specifically ban personal purchases, but it's not actually in the procedures. So I'm asking that finance also put that in the procedures. The procedures have a little bit more teeth to them than the policy rather has a little bit more teeth to it than the procedures do. So we're asking that it be in both places essentially. And then lastly, around documentation storage, our official source of record for P-card transactions is Workday. But as of right now, the documentation proving that someone has reimbursed a personal charge if it was made by accident is just stored in the finance department. It's not specifically stored in Workday. So we asked finance finance to look at ways that we could actually include that in Workday, so that way if there's turnover in finance, we still know where all that documentation is, and if anyone asks to prove that we did reimburse those purchases, we can prove that very easily. That's supposed to be completed by the end of this calendar year as well. And then lastly, we asked for justifications for all purchases on the P card, and then to update Workday to make that justification field mandatory. Finance had already been kind of working on this on the back end during our audit anyway, so they mostly had this ready to go when we issued the report. They are almost complete with it now. They just need to get some communication out to the county informing them of this. And then once that communication is ready to go, they'll flip the switch in Workday, and this field will become mandatory, and all P-card purchases will need to have justifications. So this is somewhat of a big change for the county, because before, like I said, our policy didn't specifically require it, and we're requiring it now. But this should really make sure that there's no issues around looking at a transaction and not being sure what the purpose of it is. So it says 8/31. This should be done sometime this week. I actually just talked to the finance office before I came down here, and so this should be done relatively soon. That was all I had as far as the P-card audit report. You all should have received copies of both of these reports as well, and I wanted to leave a little bit of time for questions at the end of my presentation in case there was any on either audit report or questions for internal audit in general.
Thank you, Rob. Are there questions?
Yes, Rob, could you go back and just provide some more context for the conflict of interest policy?
Yes, absolutely. Let me go back here. So that was right here. So the conflict of interest policy, the way that it was written, there was some lack of clarity, in my opinion, in the policy about what things did and did not specifically require disclosure. Namely, if someone was running some sort of business, like an Airbnb type business, we did not make it super clear in the policy whether or not that is something that had to be disclosed. In HR, when someone would ask, kind of would not necessarily give conflicting guidance, but the guidance wouldn't always be consistent. And so the policy wasn't giving any help. HR wasn't, always clear about what is what. And so we asked the policy to be clarified. I don't want to say for sure because I'm not in HR. My understanding is they're kind of moving forward with the idea that anything that generates taxable income would need to be disclosed. So that's kind of where HR sort of drew the line, because you have to draw it somewhere. So,
Thank you.
absolutely.
And you said these reports will be sent to us?
You should have already received copies. I'm happy to resend them if you need me to. I believe they should have came from Sarah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, we've got them.
The special project should have came to you all in March, and the P card in July, I believe.
Sarah, would you bump those back up to us just in case? Thanks. Are there any other questions for Rob? All right. Thanks so much. We appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you all so much. Have a great one.
All right, Dr. Noriel Armstrong is joining us with a Community Reparations Commission update. It's nice to see you, Dr. No.
Good afternoon, Chair Edwards and Commissioners. I am Dr. Noriel Armstrong, the Chief Equity and Human Rights Officer, and today I'm here with our Community Reparations Commission Chair, DeWanna Little, who's joining us virtually, and our Vice Chair, Babette Mays, to present the final report and process closeout. Gotta remember to grab the clicker. So the purpose of this presentation is to present to the Board of County Commissioners the Reparation Commission's final report and closeout. So to give you some background, the City of Asheville established the CRC, the Community Reparations Commission, and the Board of County Commissioners decided to join with them. And so the members of the commission were appointed by the Asheville City Council on March 8th, 2022, and the Buncombe County Board of Commissioners on March 15th, 2022. The mission, as you can see, is that the Reparations Commission is empowered to make short, medium, and long-term recommendations that will make significant progress toward repairing the damage caused by public and private systemic racism. So the charge. The City Council on July 14th, 2020's resolution tasked the Community Reparations Commission with the following: issuing a report in a timely manner for consideration for incorporation into short and long-term priorities and plans, providing budget and program priorities for the following to include but not be limited to: increasing minority home ownership and access to other affordable housing, increasing minority business ownership and career opportunities, developing strategies to grow equity and generational wealth, closing gaps in healthcare, education, employment and pay, neighborhood safety, and fairness with criminal justice. Specifically to the county, August 4th, 2020 reparations resolution tasked the county staff with the following: to appoint to and fully participate in the new Community Reparations Commission that the City of Asheville is creating, and directed county staff to continue prioritizing racial equity in the implementation of Buncombe County Strategic Plan, including but not limited to urgent priority areas for Black residents in Buncombe County. Update content on buncombcounty.org about the history of Buncombe County, including information about enslaved people who lived in our community, and to provide at minimum biannual updates to the County Commission on the impacts of strategies included in the strategic plan on reducing racial disparities in Buncombe County and on the progress of the County Reparations Commission. So, work that has been continued. The commissioners, the Community Reparations passed 39 recommendations on June 2024. The Community Reparations Commission then requested the city for a 6-month extension to complete additional work. This was approved by the City Council as the CRC was established by the City of Asheville and required no action by the county. Tropical Storm Helene disrupted the original 6-month time frame, and work resumed in March of 2025. From March to August 2025, the CRC created a 501c3 and worked on more community engagement. They will share a little bit more about this later in the presentation. Finally, the Community Reparations Commission agreed to apply to 2 existing boards and commissions to stay informed on updates related to any steps related to the CRC recommendations. And so now I will turn it over to Bobette Mays to continue through this presentation. And I'll be back to conclude.
That's fine. Good afternoon. And I am Bobette Mays, and I am the Vice Chair of the Reparations Commission. First of all, I would like to say that before we start with our final report, is that we lost 2 members during this process. Mr. Bernard Oliphant, who was part of economic development and lived in Chestnut Hills, which is North Asheville. And we lost a facilitator and liaison for health and wellness, Dion Greenlee Jones. They were both very important in the work that we do. So we'll go on with our presentation. Led by staff, a reporting writing team was formed in January 2024 to create the final report. The Carter Development Group was chosen to conduct the final editing and graphic design. The report was completed in August 2025. The next slides will provide a brief overview of the recommendations included in the report. The criminal justice IFA focused on addressing and rectifying the inequities faced by Black residents in the justice system. Criminal justice recommendations that align with recovery. Funding for community-based support system. Black representation in law and enforcement. Mental health support for justice-involved people and law enforcement, especially impacted by Helene. Economic development served as the foundation of the economic development IFC. Economic development recommendations that align with recovery. Provide grants to legacy neighborhoods and public housing communities. Establish business corridors for commercial space for Black-owned businesses and community service in close proximity to Black neighborhoods. Rebuilding cohesive communities for Black Asheville. Provide grants to Black-owned business. The Education IFA was committed to eliminating disparities that have historically limited opportunities for Black students. Education recommendations that realign with recovery. Universal funding for early childhood education, free high-quality child education, child care. Gifting land campus to cooperative community development programs. Gifting land for housing, recruited teachers, and hiring a reparations lawyer to enact community measures. The Health and Wellness IFA worked to close longstanding health disparities which disproportionately affect Black residents. Health and wellness recommendations align with recovery. Health care subsidiary including the establishment of a dedicated transportation service for expecting mothers, ensuring access to prenatal appointments, birth classes, and hospitals, and a free health clinic, Black birthing and healing centers, establish Black mental health networks. The Housing IFA focused on confronting both historical and ongoing injustices in housing policies and practices that harm Black residents. Housing recommendations that align with recovery. Special attention is needed to address damages to churches and homes in legacy neighborhoods as a result of Helene. Create a new dollar lot program. 501c3 committee. Over the last 6 months, this committee of the CRC has been tasked with the creation of the 501c3 to support in the implementation of reparations in Asheville and Buncombe County. Name that was approved by the CRC. 40 acres in the Land of the Sky Alliance Community Development Corporation. It would be 40 acres, LOTSACDC. Mission statement has been created and approved by CRC. The mission of 40 acres in the Land of the Sky Alliance, CRDC, is to revitalize the Asheville-Buncombe Asheville-Buncombe County community by sustainable economic opportunities, increasing access to affordable housing, improving educational and health outcomes, and reducing harm created by criminal justice involvement. This will be based on data analysis and accepted through community engagement, which being guided by the necessities and aspirations of how economically disinvested people, as well as those directly impacted by the descendants of redlining and urban renewal. The purpose of the corporation has been determined and approved by the CRC. The purpose of the corporation is to empower and to revitalize our community by developing affordable housing, fostering economic opportunity, providing equitable educational opportunities, improving health care access, reforming criminal justice systems, and enhancing quality of life for all residents. The initial incorporators were determined as the members of the 501c3 committee and approved by the CRC. Nonprofit entity has been incorporated with the North Carolina Secretary of State. Employer identification number has been obtained. Bylaws are being drafted, and initial board appointments will follow shortly. 1023 application for federal designation is underway. Final presentation. The community, CRC's Community Engagement Committee, thank you for the opportunity to share our work today. Report of work during extension, 3 points of interest, 1 previously approved 39 recommendations, and 2 recovery selections. Recommendations align with the recovery in Asheville and Buncombe County, criminal justice, economic development, education, housing, health and wellness. Recommendations that are policy-driven rather than budget, expenditure-driven. Advisory Council Education, Asheville PD creation of Community Board, Criminal Justice, and additional funding. Conclusion, upholding our commitment to stopping the harm. So we would hope that all of our 39 recommendations would be implemented, because that would be external, and we have, with the Cease the Harm, we have 104 recommendations that group did, and that would be internal. The Community Reparations Commission has completed the charge given by the Asheville City Council and the Board of County Commissioners. Dissolution of the County Reparations Committee will take place at the October 10th, 2025 City Council meeting.
Thank you, Bobette. We really appreciate that. So I just want to take this time to thank the chair and vice chair and all the members of the Community Reparations Commission for the hard work that was put into this process. Thank you, Buncombe County Commissioners, for supporting staff as we continue to do this work over the past 3 years. Next week, the chair and vice chair will present this update as a closeout to the city at the city council meeting. And then the city council will officially dissolve this ad hoc commission of the community reparations at a subsequent meeting. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. No, and thank you so much, Ms. Mays, for your presentation as well. Are there questions? Go ahead, Commissioner Wells.
I have some comments and questions. First of all, well, thank you to Bobette and everyone who served on this committee and put in a tremendous amount of time and energy. And when I was reading over the report this weekend, I especially enjoyed reading the reflections from some of the individuals that were interviewed, and that was a nice addition to it. I had one specific question, and I don't know whether Bobette or for Dr. No, but I was curious to know more about the cooperative community development, that specific one that you called out. Is that something that Bobette wants to speak to? Or?
I'll turn that over. Yeah, I'll let Ms. Mays come up.
Good afternoon, everyone. Could you please repeat your question? I'm sorry.
Certainly. There was let's see what it says here is the one on the cooperative community development. Let's see here. It says, okay, gifting land campus for cooperative community development programs. And so I was just interested to hear more about the cooperative community development programs that you had in mind.
I think the best way for me to address that is to say that most of the things that will come in the future will be the work of the 501c3, and that as we go into the future, that will be the entity that will morph into, the commission will morph into that 501c3. So without a great deal of definition at the moment, those things will be looking at community development in many areas, housing, economic development for job creation, job training, things of that nature. So I'm giving a roundabout answer to say it's still in development. We are identifying some partners that we hope to work with in terms of with the city, county, different affordable housing programs that the city has enacted and that we're trying to partner with, making use of some things that are out there that the Housing Authority has, such as homeownership voucher programs. We feel that if we can create homeowners in addition to the rental properties, homeownership has always been a pathway in the United States for generational family wealth. And so if we can impact that area, housing will be one of the major economic development areas that we would like to focus on. There are many others. Criminal justice, of course, impacts our community adversely. But in the beginning, I think that from the community development perspective, housing would be the biggest impact that we would bring to bear.
Great.
Relative to your question.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
That was helpful. And Dr. Armstrong, this one's probably for you. So when I was reading through that, several of those I think are in alignment with our proposed strategic plan. And so I'm curious to hear, like, if you have a plan of how you're going to track some of this in relation to the strategic plan, just to be able to kind of look at how that lines up.
Yes, first of all, that was Mr. Durain Richardson, who was a part of the Community Reparations Commission. Want to state that. And so right now we are, of course, recovering from Helene. So a lot of our focus is looking at the community reparations recommendations in alignment with the cease to harm audit recommendations, in alignment with recovery, and also strategic plan. So we're kind of, right now, we're finalizing the crosswalk now that we've gotten to this point in the process to really look at how those things maybe intersect, align, what things we've already started working on, what things may be feasible to implement over these next few years leading into 2030 according to the strategic plan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions?
I have
Yeah,
two.
go ahead, Commissioner
I
Whiteside.
have two. One is, I understand reparations, what you're trying to do. Look, I've been in this all my life. But what I don't understand is, why did you pull Helene into this?
So
It seems to me that that's two different issues. What we've got to do with Helene. That's one thing, but I don't want to see that take away from the reparations project.
Correct, and neither do we. However, or I should say, in addition to the reparations project, because of Tropical Storm Helene and being in recovery, there were harms that were done prior to, and then things that were still done. And so looking at, are there places where some of the recommendations are able to fall into and be incorporated with, and some may also be able to stand alone as well. Oh, okay. Thank you.
And the other question I have is, how do you plan to fund the 501(c)(3)?
So the 501(c)(3) will not be funded through the county. That will be through, so I will let Mr. Richardson come back up and share that as well.
So let me get my manners together. Hi, my name is Dwayne Richardson. And I was fortunate to a degree, be tasked with the creation of the legals, if you will, for the creation of the 501(c)(3). And so we have drafted a preliminary steering committee for the fundraising as he has asked. And so I can share that with the county commissioners. A rough draft of what it looks like has been finalized. I say rough draft and then finalized. A rough draft has been created. We're working to finalize it. And what we intend to do is to engage several entities, our local churches, denominational faiths. Without going into too much detail, the Presbyterian Church, First Presbyterian Church of Asheville, has shown a tremendous interest, and they've been a really supportive group as we begin to launch our process. But there are others in the city that have shown interest and we believe will be partners for us. We have some creative things in mind that we believe that because we have two professional athletic teams, NBA and NFL, that with us having a tax-exempt status, that there is the possibility that some of those young men, as 60% of the NFL, 80% of the NFL, 60% of the NBA are African Americans. So there's a possibility there that we may interest those young men in being supporters of our 501(c)(3) going forward. We have several avenues that we think will be interesting to them that they could support and find a way to shelter some of their tax dollars in a way that could impact the community and help individuals that were impacted generationally. So without boring you to death, there are, have it with me, but a plan in place to generate that fundraising. We have other institutions. Truist Bank comes to mind. They have a program where they will match funds with 501(c)(3)s. We would hope that potentially the city and the county would work with us with some of the funding that previously was made available. Maybe we could use it to bring in other funding. I realize it would remain under your control, but perhaps there's a partnership that we could create to where those funds could be used to attract, like I said, I use Truist as an example here, that could be used to match funds and to help us with our funding. That funding would be used to bring to bear the things that we've created, our recommendations, and knowing that the city and county have been courageous in even creating this and giving us the opportunity to reach this point, but that we may have to go it alone from here. And I think that our fundraising efforts will allow us to do that. And when there's the opportunity, I'll be happy to share the detail of what that plan looks like.
Thank you.
Sure.
Are there other
Hey,
questions?
Dewana, go ahead and unmute, and we'll get you in here.
Hey, I'm Dewana Little. I'm the chair of the Reparations Commission as it stands, and I appreciate Dwayne and Bobette and Ms. Norrell for speaking on our behalf and the work that we've done up to this point. To answer the question that that Mr. Whiteside just asked, we will be with our 501(c)(3), while we do have fundraising plans that have been created, we also definitely will be looking to city and county to see if they'll be willing to come in. I definitely want to support that part of the initiative because funding is limited, and understanding that our municipalities are restricted on how they can how they can utilize funds, public dollars. We also want to be considerate of that as well. And so we have taken necessary steps to really start working on the external funding. But initially, there is no funding for our nonprofit up front. We will be working to raise those funds, and apply for grants and do all the things that nonprofits do in order to seek the funds to really be able to implement those recommendations. Um, Recognizing that a lot of them are outside of our city and county purview, especially in reference to education and health, we definitely want to also have our options on how we implement those recommendations as well. And so I just wanted to say that. And thank y'all. Thank y'all so much for this process, and for seeing our recommendations and also the additional recommendations that came from the Cease to Harm audit, and considering those for implementation.
Thank you, Dewana. Commissioners, are there other questions? All right, there being none, thank you all so much for the many, many hours that you all have spent doing this work over the last several years. And as you said, there's still pieces of it that are works in progress, and particularly places that are important to the county and our affordable housing goals. So we do look forward to continuing hearing the work and how we can continue to stay in touch and supportive of all that y'all have done to this point. So again, thank you. And thanks again for all you do, Dr. No. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right, we have a Continuum of Care quarterly update with Lacey Hoyle.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I am here with your quarterly update on Continuum of Care activities today. Wanted to start by sharing some new appointments to the COC board. So we have filled one of the community member seats. Marcia Mount Shoup joins us from Grace Covenant Presbyterian Church. The Faith Community seat has also been filled by Mary Brown, who is a member of the Church Street Collaborative and a pastor at Central United Methodist Church. The Public Safety seat is now occupied by Captain Jonathan Brown with the Asheville Police Department. The VA appointed representative seat has changed. It is now Jerry Kivett Kimbrough, who is the grant per diem liaison for the VA. So he works with their supportive housing program and the SSVF program, which is rapid rehousing. And then the HACA appointed representative is still being filled in an interim capacity, but is now being filled by their COO, Ella Santos. We are still looking to fill 3 board seats. There's an application process that is open, and the nominating and membership committee is actively recruiting for those seats. And then also wanted to share some information on some of the notable board actions over the last quarter. First, our COC charter stipulates that we will potentially revise our charter yearly. So the COC board at their most recent meeting adopted the first set of charter revisions, and then those were sent to the membership for a vote as well. The COC has also partnered with the Downtown YMCA to offer shower access one Sunday per month to unhoused individuals. This is a volunteer-based effort with both the YMCA and the COC offering volunteers. The Asheville Fire Department's resource engagement support team, the REST team, is also there to connect with folks who come to utilize that service, and to connect them with supportive services if desired. I think we've had one instance of that so far and had some success with it, so really excited that that's happening monthly now. Earlier in the summer, the COC board approved our participation in the Right at Home Homelessness Prevention Project. I'm going to speak more about that project in just a few moments. And the COC board also voted to approve the formation of a small planning group of board members to support homelessness response in West Asheville following a request from city staff and the Asheville Police Department to collaborate with the COC to address growing concerns in that area. That planning group has met once so far and will meet again actually later this week to finalize some plans to be presented to the board at our September meeting. So I will have more detail on that plan and a future update for you all. There was a selection process undertaken, and the COC board approved a fiscal agent for the COC, and that is Goodwill Industries. They are going to administer our plan for compensation of people with lived and living experience, which was adopted earlier in the year. And they will also be available to support funding applications as needed should the COC desire to apply for funds that might stipulate that local governments cannot be the applicant for that. The board also has approved a memorandum of understanding between the COC and the lead agency, who is also the HMIS lead, both, of course, the city of Asheville, and that happened in tandem with that first set of charter revisions that were adopted. And then finally, in the last quarter, the board approved 2 new work groups, a homelessness prevention work group to work with the project manager for the Right at Home project that I mentioned previously, and then a planning work group to generate the plan for this year's Code Purple effort. Both of those groups have meetings underway presently. And speaking of Code Purple, I wanted to briefly touch on the closeout of last season as we are preparing for this season. So we had 70 Code Purple nights last year according to those parameters that you see below 32 degrees forecasted, including wind chill or between 33 and 40 degrees with precipitation in the forecast as well as for other extreme weather events. So 70 nights total. Average number of folks utilizing Code Purple per night this past season was 48. And the maximum number of people on a single night was 83 folks. As I mentioned before, the Code Purple Planning Work Group is now active, and they are working on details for the effort for this upcoming season, which we anticipate will start again in mid-October. We're aiming to have an updated Code Purple manual and a plan to present to the COC board at our September meeting. So that will be another thing I'll share details about at a future update for you all. I wanted to share some information about some funding updates. So first, there were 2 providers in our continuum of care who were awarded Rush 2 funding. So this is recaptured ESG funding that has been dedicated to disaster response at the direction of the state. So there was 1 round of this funding shortly after the storm. That round of funding went primarily to VIA Health to administer the Back at Home program for rapid rehousing for Helene survivors. This is the 2nd round of that funding. And there was around $1.9 million available statewide for that. And the parameters are that it has to serve folks who were living in disaster-affected areas at the time of the storm. So HelpMate applied for and was awarded $75,000 for homelessness prevention activities, and Homeward Bound applied for and was awarded $484,500 for homelessness prevention, for rapid rehousing, and then for some support to their HMIS as well. And then the Right at Home program, which I've mentioned a couple of times now. So this is a national homelessness prevention partnership, and they are seeking to pilot prevention strategies in 10 communities nationwide. They approached the city of Asheville at the beginning of the year because we are one of the communities they were interested in piloting a program for. So the COC board voted to approve participation in that program. The lead agency made application for a planning grant, which was then awarded in the amount of $275,000 for project development for the next 6 to 12 months. So there was a homelessness prevention work group formed. That work group is going to work with a project manager who will be part of the city's homeless strategy division. over the next 6 to 12 months to develop a plan for a COC-wide homelessness prevention system, which will then be considered for funding for implementation by the folks at Right at Home for a potential 3-year implementation period. So that's really exciting news. Homelessness prevention is something that we know that our community needs more of, and this is a huge opportunity for us. Also wanted to just share about funding applications that have been submitted. So you probably remember me talking about ESG funding in previous years, and we have submitted our application for fiscal year 25 and 26. This is annual funding for emergency response and housing stability activities. And you can see here that our 2 applicants for this year were Helpmate and Homeward Bound. Helpmate requested $50,000 for emergency shelter, $20,000 for homelessness prevention, and then $2,200 for their HMIS comparable database that they utilize. Homeward Bound requested $60,000 for rapid rehousing. The total amount of money available to our COC was that $139,533. So since the request didn't quite meet that amount, the COC Funding Committee recommended a little bit of additional funding for Helpmate's emergency shelter and homelessness prevention programs, and that's primarily because Homeward Bound indicated that they are at capacity in terms of their current prevention funding and what they're able to utilize with their staffing. Also wanted to share that we have made application to Dogwood Health Trust for a collaboration and innovation grant in the amount of $270,000 for development and implementation of continuum of care-wide diversion services. So diversion is services to try to prevent people from entering the homeless system. And then we also applied for a capacity building grant for $35,000 for initial implementation of that compensation for people with lived and living experience plan. And then I wanted to just share next steps. Our next board meeting is virtual. We're alternating in person and virtual. The next one will be September 11th, 2025 at 4 p.m. There's also a membership meeting later in the month, September 25th at 6 p.m. at Harris Cherokee Center Banquet Hall. And then just as a reminder, your county representatives to the COC board are Commissioner Horton as the non-voting liaison from this body, and then myself. And I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Questions for Lacey?
Commissioner Ball?
I've got, excuse me, more of a process question. So I see that there's a West Asheville subgroup that has been created. I'm curious how that group is or maybe coordinating with the city. I saw the city recently passed some panhandling ordinance updates and some zoning changes. I'm curious if that subgroup or the broader COC is engaged in those changes in dialogue.
Well, the group of folks that's working on that planning effort is COC board officers, including the city's representatives on the board. So they are actively involved in that planning effort with us every step of the way, and collaborating with the providers who are represented on that small group, as well as myself and folks with lived experience who are part of our board.
It's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, Lacey, thank you so much. We appreciate the update.
Thank you.
All right, commissioners, are there any items for open discussion? All right, if not, we will call for a motion for closed session after we adjourn this meeting. Is that correct, Mr. Euler?
Yes, we will. We will close the briefing, then we will go into closed session. Then once we're done with closed session, we will adjourn the closed session meeting and then move into the regular meeting.
All right.
I need a motion to go into closed session for the following reason: to establish or instruct the public body staff or negotiating agents concerning the position taken by or on behalf of the public body in negotiating the price and other material terms of a contract or proposed contract for the acquisition of real property by purchase, option, exchange, or lease. The statutory authority is contained in General Statute 143.318.11, subsection A5.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And before we go into closed session, we actually need to adjourn from this meeting. So
Yes.
do I have a motion to adjourn our briefing meeting?
Move to adjourn. Briefing.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Hartnett. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned and in closed session, where we will adjourn from closed session before our 5 p.m. regular meeting. Thanks, y'all.